another edition of The Pedal Shift Project. The Pedal Shift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride, let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net/319, and you can email the show at pedalshift@pedalshift.net or text me at 202-930-1109 and check Pedal Shift out on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 319th edition of the Pedal Shift Project. My name's Tim Mooney. Thanks so much for joining. On this edition, Chapter 4 of the Southern California Adventure, the final chapter. On this edition, we wrap up the trip in a unique way, an overnight in San Jose as a way of getting from San Diego back to Los Angeles, and more importantly, a test of how well gate checking works for a Brompton on a bike tour. Did the bike get banged around by baggage handlers, or did it make it okay? One thing that I wanted to mention, and I believe I've mentioned this on prior chapters, but I wanted to underscore it. I did do a mileage run here for this chapter of the trip. And I'm mindful of the fact that that's not the greatest use of airline transportation. So I made sure to offset not only this particular mileage run, its CO2, but I actually offset the entire trip's CO2. And I will tell you how much CO2 I offset in the statistics section. But until then, you have quite a bit to listen to here in Chapter 4. Good afternoon. This is the beginning of Chapter 4, the final chapter of the Southern California 2023 adventure. And I shouldn't call it Southern California now, should I? Today, this particular chapter focuses in on, a little bit of a less bikey, but bike-related stunt that I've got. And that is basically doing a mileage run for my frequent flyer miles, but the bike is a companion for me, and actually a critical part. Number one, I'm standing here in San Diego right now, in the middle of, basically a big tourist section of San Diego. I am nowhere near the airport. I'm going to be riding to San Diego Airport, which we all know has very good bicycle access from last year, and I will be boarding an Alaskan Airlines flight. In fact, it's funny, I'm actually really close to the airport. I just saw an airplane land, which seems to be only a few hundred yards away from here. It's about a 10-minute ride. But in the interim, I've got a little extra time, more than I thought that I would. So the question ends up being, do I want to get to the airport super early and just get everything all fixed up there and have dinner there, or do I want to try to find some place here in this beautiful city of San Diego to do one last little bit of adventure? And I think the answer is I'm going to work my way towards the airport, and if something intervenes, like something looks cool, then I'll go there. It's a little chilly. I'm a little bit cooled down because I stopped riding, obviously, from the end of the last chapter, as you heard. And sitting on the ferry, I'm now actually a little chilled outside right now. So I'm going to work my way towards the airport, see what intervenes. Otherwise, you'll find out in a moment. What happens next? So I rolled past a couple of fine-looking establishments that are more like touristy bar, restaurant things right on the water. And it just wouldn't have worked out so well for my bike. It just wasn't the right fit. So I am still moving away from the touristy area and peeking over my right shoulder to see if there's anything on the downtown side. Just nothing is really appealing to me. You may even be hearing the planes landing and taking off right now. So I think I am going to be just going to the airport early, which seems like such a drag, but I'm realizing that being in a city with a full loaded bike situation, there are limited places where you can make it work. It's got to be someplace with outdoor dining where you can kind of keep an eye on the bike the whole time. And that's just, oddly enough, just not a setup for this immediate area. I'm sure if I really looked for it, I could do it, but the amount of time I have is kind of in that, it's kind of in between. It's like way too early to go to the airport, but simultaneously not enough time for me to go hunt for something. So I think, barring anything new that pops up, I think we're looking at the airport. And that's okay. I mean, I'm absolutely dead for certain that there is a good reason to do that, because there's probably a good place to catch a decent meal and a local beer, and I'm very cool with that. All right, now making sure that I'm getting to the airport properly. That's going to be the other question mark. But according to Google Maps, basically I just want to stay on Harbor, and I just don't know if I'm on the right side of it or not. We'll figure that out. I'm going against the flow, but on a sidewalk. I think this will work. What a beautiful late afternoon, early evening as the sun starts to go down and just boats off here. I've taken so many pictures as part of Chapter 3. I probably should do the same for Chapter 4, but unfortunately, if you take a picture out towards the water, it's very backlit with the way the sun is. So just have to keep it in the memory bank. All right, more to come. Continuing my ride down Harbor Boulevard, I'm realizing I'm coming in from the opposite side of how I departed the airport last time. So everything I'm seeing is a little unfamiliar to me at this point. I'm just kind of following the signs. Let's see, Terminal 2, Alaska Airlines. Fantastic. So I now know I need to find my way to Terminal 2 somehow. So I will continue to do that. The challenge is I'm on the wrong side of Harbor to be able to get there, but there are a few places where there are crosswalks. So I'm just going to keep riding towards the airport, and as we get closer to the terminals, I'll find my way over. I may have to overshoot it. I think that's what I found when I exited, that I needed to go further out and then kind of wrap back around. That may be my best bet, as I just went through another intersection that didn't have a crosswalk to get in. So we'll just kind of see how it goes, play it by ear. I do know that there's an access point. It would be neat if it was signed. Lots of construction going on. They're just continuing to build and expand and whatnot down here in San Diego. So that is probably adding to some of the confusion that's going on here. But we will find our way. More to come. And just like that, it appears. What a giant mess it is. But here's the pedestrian way, which I'm going to utilize as my bike way as well. It is a bit of a mess. All right, there we go. Yeah, a lot of crossing, a lot of construction in here. It didn't feel real safe at that moment, but there was a sign that said that the car needed to be going 20 miles per hour, even though it was going about 50 down the way here. But yes, this meandering kind of sidewalk, kind of not, but it's definitely meant to be a pedestrian access point, which, like I said, means it's a bike access point for me. Let's see, it looks like I may have done this a bit early though. This looks like Terminal 1. Hopefully, this is not a terrible idea for me, who needs to go to Terminal 2. One would think that it all connects, but I wish I could say I'm familiar enough with the airport. Oh yeah, it does look like it all connects. So I think we're in good shape here. Kind of a hot mess. Lots of cars. I've been breathing in so much car exhaust. It's very busy at the airport. It's a Friday afternoon, so there must be a ton of arrivals and departures going on right now. So yeah, I had a chance to get the earlier flight, and I'm really grateful I didn't. I would have made it just fine, but it would have been tight, and I did not want that, so I'm glad I went with the 7:30. All right, from underneath the faux spirit of St. Louis and San Diego Airport, we made it. I am now kind of pushing the bike in. I'm going to hit the restroom, and I think I'm going to change out of the bike touring gear and into some more civilian gear, and then figure out a good place to pack up. So I'm hoping that this is a better situation than it was at Orlando Airport, where I felt a little rushed. I don't need to be rushed. I shouldn't be rushed, but here we go. All right, well, that went very smoothly, much more smoothly than in Orlando. I am all in stealth mode for the Brompton. And for those of you who are new to the show, and when I say terms like stealth mode, let me kind of do a bit of a review there. I have a cover on the bike, which, while it doesn't necessarily, transform the thing into something unrecognizable, it's at least a little less recognizable as a bicycle because it covers up the wheels and it covers up most of the pedals. So if someone was looking at it, they know that there's something going on. They can see the small wheels that it rolls on. But it looks not unlike what could be a stroller folded up or a piece of luggage or something along those lines. So it is a good way to get through some of the pinch points that are out there. Everything else is in a duffel except for my other kind of collapsible carry-on shoulder bag, for lack of a better way of putting it. And within that, I've got something new, which is going to be important for tonight. And that is a bag made by IKEA called a Dimpa. If you are not familiar with the Swedish company IKEA, of course, they make all sorts of different things. And this is a very sturdy bag with a couple of handles on it. It's clear. It's usually supposed to be used for, apparently, spare tires or something along those lines. It is very famous in the Brompton community for what is going to be happening tonight. And that is to essentially put the bike in with a stealth cover in there, which allows baggage handlers to more easily carry it around. Those handles can handle weight, which is great. Typically speaking, what you will do is you will throw in some cardboard to shield the bike a little bit. I feel like that is maybe a little bit of overkill, especially for a gate-checked bag. Now, this may be famous last words or something like that for the bike. I'm going to go without it tonight just because I think to hunt something like that down right now, I've got time, but it just feels like it would be a bit of an overkill. The things that are the most problematic are going to be the hinge clamps. They tend to be the things that do bend or break. But again, I've tightened them up. They're not going to have that problem. So I think I feel pretty good about that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's kind of worth knowing here on the pre-security side. The goal in the next step is to essentially take this combination of bike and bags and get up and check in fully and get rid of the big duffel. That allows me to be a lot more mobile. And then it goes through security. I've never had a problem going through security with this bike. The challenge tonight is going to be, because this is a commuter plane, I assume everything I've ever heard suggests that you can gate check your bike and that there's no additional cost or anything along those lines, simply because the plane that they choose, it can't handle it. So I'm going to give that a shot, see what happens. Worst case scenario, they may charge me $40 at the gate. I'm thinking that that's unlikely. So here we go. This is the big test here for the beginning of Chapter 4. One other thing that I wanted to mention here while we're at the airport, something that happened yesterday, and that was I got an email from Alaska Airlines offering me $250 in flight credit. Well, that got my attention. And the idea was to change my flight. And it was for tomorrow morning's crack of dawn flight from San Jose to LAX. The reason why I chose it was because I didn't intend to be doing anything in San Jose. And I wanted to not throw any caution to the wind in terms of the possibility of missing my connection in LAX. But there is another flight that is possible that would work just fine. And it looks like there are seats available on that flight. So I may be getting up stupid early for the benefit of volunteering to get a large flight credit, which I will gleefully take because that's effectively how much it costs for the round trip to LA. So this could fund another adventure, perhaps even a summer adventure on the West Coast. So I'm kind of crossing my fingers that this all works out, and that it's all part of this adventure. So we have multiple things that we're trying to score on here for this Chapter 4. One, of course, as I mentioned before, getting the MVP status. That seems pretty clearly going to be locked in. Number 2, of course, getting this bike gate checked properly and seeing how that all works, because that will impact future adventures on the West Coast, because so many of those flights use these smaller jets, just to see what it's like. In fact, when I flew back from Medford back in, was it 2 years ago? I think it was 2 years ago. I actually specifically chose a flight that had a larger plane to Seattle rather than one of these regional carriers because I was too nervous about it. Well, now we're testing this. So if you were sort of like, what does all this have to do with bike touring? That's kind of the bottom line, is that it just expands my ability to do flights that are on these smaller jets and getting over the concept of the gate check. Doing 2 flights in a row, getting the practice at it, just seeing what it looks like and feels like will give me more confidence down the line. Alrighty. We're playing some In Excess right now, which probably will get this podcast banned or something. Go listen to In Excess, they're a great band. Well, it turns out I'm a bit of an idiot, and I think I overshot. I'm in the wrong section of Terminal 2, and San Diego's airport's really weird. You can't connect from one section of check-in to the other, apparently. So yeah, I grabbed, because I was in the international section, and for some reason, I don't know why, international people just abandon their carts. I'm utilizing one of the rental carts that somebody just abandoned for free. And I'm going to move a little bit more quickly because while I can move pretty reasonably well with the bike rolling and the duffel, it's not perfect. It's a little slow. So this is much faster. And I don't know why I'm not in a rush, but for whatever reason, I'm kind of anxious to get checked in so that I can have a more relaxed dinner situation. I'm really yes, Alaska. I now see my first reference to Alaska Airlines, which is exactly what I need. All right, more to come. About 6 o'clock, a little after 6 o'clock, and my flight boards in about 45 minutes. The dinner options were limited. I think I chose the right place for beer, but the wrong place for food. I ended up at Stone Brewing, and they have a fantastic IPA, which I've always liked. And as longtime listeners know, there was a Stone Beer Brewing sticker on that gave the name for the Green Goblin, so that was kind of fitting. But food options were mediocre, but it was fun. Hung out, had a great beer. It is freezing in this airport, and I'm pretty sure it's just me, but I'm like bitterly cold right now, and I don't understand why. My flight is on time, and I am going to go to the gate at some point in the not too distant future and see if there's a gate agent there and see what I can find out about the whole situation with this bike. And I'll know pretty quickly whether or not this is going to be a thing or not. I don't expect it to. The situation up in San Jose is going to be very interesting. My hotel is literally a 5-minute bike ride away. That is kind of intriguing. That was one of the reasons why I kind of did this, in addition to all the reasons that I talked about, the test the gate check, get the MVP status, all that other kind of stuff. But it was just kind of fascinating how close this particular, it's a Motel 6. It's nothing fancy, of course. Sorry for the audio, but somebody is scratching a chair for reasons that are unclear to me. In any event, I'm just sort of intrigued with the concept of being able to just go out the front of an airport and 5 minutes later biking to a hotel. The hotel closeness is so important for tomorrow morning. I still have to be there. My flight is supposed to, my goodness, the reason why she's doing it is to block off a certain area, but could have picked him up. That's all I'm saying. Anyways, point being, the flight leaves at 6:15 in the morning, leaves at 6:15, which means I'm getting up at 5 o'clock, and that's kind of cutting it a little bit tight, to be perfectly honest. I'm going to be ready to go. I'm going to have the bike all packed up and ready to go so that I can go there. I'm not even sure what time the airport opens up for checking a bag. It may not be till 5:30, but in any event, I'll be there. I'd like to be there an hour ahead, no matter what, but I will get there bleary-eyed. Hope that there's a place where I can get coffee in the morning. But the most important thing is that if I can take advantage of the delay, I will do that, assuming I can get that second flight and assuming that things look good. But the weather looks good tomorrow. I don't think there's any reason why I would lose the opportunity to make my flight home. That's the most important thing. I got to get home tomorrow. If I don't, there may be a revolution. Our dog Gizmo was apparently not behaving so much tonight, and I think that I need to get home to set the little guy straight in a good way. I think you don't need to hear more about our dog situation, but he's an old man, and he is set in his ways, and I think he needs a two-parent family. In any event, tomorrow morning is going to come in very early. You're going to be a part of this in this particular chapter, but of course, first, we got to get on the plane. We got to get this thing gate checked, this bike gate checked, and then we fly to San Jose, and then you'll hear from me on the other end, and then we'll kind of go from there. I am not sure if there's going to be an opportunity for me to do an entry between now and when things are set with the plane. So we're going to have to figure that all out. I feel like it's complete chaos here, and there's really not a lot of people in the terminal. It's a soundscape. This is bike touring too, right? It's the transportation in between places, and getting yourself home from a bike tour is as much a part of a bike tour as anything else. This is why Chapter 4 exists. Update. I'm starving, so I got more food. It'll be interesting for the weigh-in when I get back. Update number 2, I took a little bit of a risk, and I went to talk to the gate agent and confessed that it was a bicycle and got no pushback whatsoever. So I will get an orange tag, which will allow me to gate check, which means I'll get it in the jetway after I get off the plane, which is the ultimate good setup for me, which means that I'll have the bike immediately. I'll go down, get my duffel after I land, and then basically put the bike together and then ride to the hotel. There's a decent chance that I could be at the hotel by like 9:30, 9:45 maybe. I land a little after 9 is what I'm thinking. So like depending on what the game is in San Jose with check bags, it'll be very interesting. But it's only a few minutes to kind of reassemble things, and it will be a very slapdash version of that because, like I said, it's only a 5-minute ride away. So I really am not intending, for instance, I took off those rock straps. I'm just going to use the old school, like the attached Brompton straps, because who cares about heel strike for a 5-minute ride, right? So we're just going to try to like make this as quick as possible, because ultimately getting to the hotel as fast as I can, getting settled and getting set, and then basically just leaving things as they are. I mean, my intention is to find my toiletry bag, brush my teeth, and go to bed as quickly as I can. And then, I've already got my alarm set for the morning. So, yeah. So this is looking all right so far. So far, so good. So far, so good. But you know how it goes when I declare victory before victory is attained. It tends not to go well. Let's see what happens. And we have success. The gate attendant was like, yep, we'll gate check that, and just took a picture of the orange tag that Alaska uses for gate check stuff, and I will leave it at the opening to the plane and pick it up in San Jose the same way. So we are in full success mode at this point, so that's great. Now I get to eat. Fantastic. And greetings from San Jose. Well, that went really, really well. I have not looked at the condition of the bike, but it was ready for me right when I walked out of the aircraft, which was fantastic. To backtrack a little bit, we boarded from an outdoor location in San Diego, and I set it down. It felt like in the middle of the tarmac, but as directed, so that was fine. But then, yeah, it was right there when I got out here in San Jose, so even easier potentially than hauling it onto the plane and throwing it into the overhead, but maybe not quite as thrilling. So we'll check out the condition of it when I go get the bags in a moment here, or the duffel. But yeah, that went pretty smoothly, so I'm feeling better about it now. Of course, condition of the bike is critical, so we'll find out more later. All right, we are outside of the airport. I got all bags. Bike is reassembled. All is good. There was one bit of, I'll call it damage, but it was easily fixed. The rear tail reflector was bent into the, rear fender, which turned out fine. It was easy to fix, but it is a great example of why you prefer to handle these things yourself rather than have baggage claim do it. Not a big deal. I'm happy to say that this was a good experience for the moment, but I very easily could have not been. So now it's starting to be like, what would I do prevent that. The interesting thing is that, when I talked about cardboard, it tends to be on the side. This was on the rear. So now I'm sort of like, what are the things that one can do to protect in that space? I just don't know. I'm going to have to figure that out. All right. Well, now we have the more complex part. Getting out of here is not as obvious as it at first seemed. So I think I see where I need to go. Whether this is particularly safe venture is still up for debate. We'll figure it out. I think I see the pathway out. So we're going to turn on lights. We're going to be lit up like a Christmas tree. And we're going to hope that this ends up being a safe and simple process, because guess who gets to do it in a few hours again? I found it. I was going the wrong way and was all set to try to join vehicular traffic. I was like, this is not right. And then turned around and then saw green lines on Google Maps. And I was like, that's the bike path out of here. It took a little bit of doing, but I found it. And it is so easy to get in and out of this airport. I was, Google Earth was right and Street View was right. It was a piece of cake. This is quite literally going to take me half the time tomorrow because I'll know where I'm going. But yeah, and there's dedicated crosswalks and everything. It's a busy area, but it is very doable. And yeah, what a great setup. This is very reminiscent of Crystal City being so close to DCA Airport in Washington. Well, Arlington technically, but neither here nor there. Yeah, this is a fantastic setup. So yeah, if the Bay Area is part of your bicycle touring adventure, this is very easy to pull off. One of the better airports, but there is a trick and it's not signed. That's the downside. Pardon me while I try not to get killed crossing a not built for this walkway. All right. Yeah, it's also, dark and I've got my lights on and everything, but yeah, we're almost there. I don't see my hotel at this point. I see other hotels, which is probably a good sign. Yes, exciting. And again, like I said, it is reasonably safe. There's a couple of pinch points in terms of crossings, but really not bad in the morning. Nobody's going to be around here at the time that I'm going to be. So absolutely fantastic. I believe I'm going under 101 or something of similar note here in a moment. So I'm going to end this discussion for a moment and then we will be back in the hotel. And we are here at the glorious Motel 6. Actually pretty good. Of all the Motel 6s I have been at, the room is actually pretty reasonable. This is a decent location. And shake a stick at how convenient it is to the airport. That is for darn sure. It was on the quote-unquote wrong side of the road, which made it a little tricky to get in, but what I did was I double backed, I was on a sidewalk on the going against the flow of traffic. So I had to go cross back over in order to get to the bike lane, which allowed me to go under the overpass, and then I had to use the crosswalk to safely cross to do basically a U-turn to come back in to this hotel, and that worked out fantastically. There is a Denny's here, which if I am silly and get up stupid early, I could conceivably come and get breakfast before I go to the airport, but that is just not going to happen. Okay, so here we are in the middle of a chapter, and I'm about to go to sleep. This is a rare event in the tour journals. Normally, a tour journal ends at the end of my day. However, this chapter continues tomorrow morning at 05 early in the morning. I am going to be getting up around 5. That's around 5. That's what I'm going to be setting my alarm for, at least. And then I'm basically going to hop on the bike and go. I'm quite literally not going to do anything other than find my toothbrush and keep the bike packed up, because there is no good reason to unpack anything at this point. We will handle all of that at the airport. Just getting there an hour early should be plenty of time for me to check in and see where we're going. All right. What an adventure today has been, and it continues in a few hours for me and a few seconds for you. Good morning from the very fast ride to the airport. This morning is going to go fast, and I'm going to have limited opportunities to make recordings here if I end up taking this flight, which I think I am. I'm genuinely surprised at how busy it is, but I guess there must be more flights than I expected this hour. Also, there's somebody who was literally on their bike checking their phone in the middle of the bike lane just now. So I had to go around them. Very strange how much rush hour there is here at 5 a.m. Crazy. All right, well, I'm all packed up. As you can hear, I'm biking, and I should be at the airport in about 5 minutes or so, and then it'll take me about 5 minutes or so to undo everything and get checked in. So, part 2 of chapter 4 commences. Away we go. It feels like we have not been gone for very long, but here we are back in the terminal. Bag is checked all the way to DCA, which took surprisingly a long time. I've watched a recent video on how complex the back end of these systems are, and you would think, oh, it would be super easy because it's an Alaska flight to an Alaska flight, but it's the same almost DOS-based system, like text-based interface system, and it inputs to every flight. So what I thought would be a couple of clicks of a mouse clearly is not the case. It's all text-based. Anyways, the gate attendant did a great job, but she needed a little help from an expert who I was grateful was there. If this had been during a busier time, might have been a lot harder to pull off. So I'm very happy that my bag, and I confirmed that it was a DCA on it, so that's fantastic. All right, next up is seeing if I'm on this flight. It boards actually quite soon. This has been a bit of a whirlwind. I have been awake for less than 45 minutes and all checked in and all set. So, man, what a whirlwind chapter 4 has become. But, we're going to know much more about things by the time we get to the gate here. A lot of avenues for how this final chapter is to be told get determined by what happens at the gate. All right, much more to come. All right, answers abound. I went up with 2 questions. Number 1 was, are you still looking for volunteers? The answer was no, they were not. It is a full flight, but they aren't overbooked, it seems. So my line on getting a flight credit is blocked, but that is fine because this is part of my original plan. And where I'm at was, can we gate check? And the answer was, of course you can. So I'm staring at my orange tag, and in the Dimpa bag is my Brompton bike, and that is just absolutely fantastic. It was interesting. He asked again, what is it? Is it a roller? And I was like, yeah, because it is. So in any event, we are ready to roll. The airport plays a very interesting blend of smooth jazz in the morning, which is kind of fun. So boarding in a few minutes, and then off we go. And like I said, a fair amount of time in LAX as opposed to here. That is probably for the better. All right, off we go. From seat 15C, we are gold. Bike is being handled by a very pleasant baggage handler, and it is off to LA we go. All right, good morning. Sun is out. I am in the pet area in the LAX terminal. So it's open air. It's kind of actually nice here. I'll have to bring the pups here at some point if we end up doing a little West Coast swing through LA. Okay, so how'd it go? Well, it appears everything is in great shape. I took a quick look at the same reflector that got bent last time, and it is fine. It is not bent into the fender. So everything looks good. I'm actually pretty impressed with how this all ended up turning out. The one downside was that the bike was put on its side, but when I exited the plane, this was another outside disembarkation. So when we left San Diego last night, it was an outside embarkment, and then in San Jose, it was a jetway. It was a jetway this morning in San Jose, and then outdoors here in LAX. So, how did it all go? I would say I am no longer against/afraid of gate checking the Brompton. I do think that there is certainly more wear and tear possibilities for this scenario. So I'm still going to actively try to look for planes that are big enough that can handle the Brompton and the overhead, it will just make me feel better. I think that the protective element of this bag was minimal, so I'm not sure if doing it without cardboard is a great idea, but as we discovered, man, this thing can get banged around, this bike can get banged around in places that you weren't expecting. I've seen a whole bunch of people with very sophisticated, they use foam piping in certain areas, and they put their clamps, the hinge clamps, in a plastic bag. And all of that would have been great, except for the fact that the one thing that got dinged last night was something that I've never seen protected ever. So it is kind of interesting. I think the investment into a hard shell case is another idea, but then at that point you may as well check it. So yeah, lots of interesting takeaways for all of this. As far as what's going on this morning here in Los Angeles, it occurred to me that I've got the ability to leave the airport and go on a little adventure, but I'm gonna confess to you all right now, I'm tired. This was a very early morning. 4:45 wake up is not human, unless, of course, you were tuned to that in your profession, job, whatever does that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a relaxed morning instead. I do have to say, though, being outside and in the sun does feel pretty good, but I also recognize that I don't have my helmet. I don't have a whole bunch of things. I don't have, I think, a pair of sunglasses. I think I packed all of those. It didn't occur to me that I could do this, which makes not a lot of sense, quite frankly, but it is what it is. So I think that it makes the most sense to enjoy myself, grab some food. I thought about getting into the MVP lounge, the Alaska lounge, but that's a pricey day pass, and I'm not sure even being here 5 hours if it's worth it. I guess that's $6 an hour, and I can kind of wander around the rest of the airport to decide whether I can find a comfortable space. LAX is not great in this terminal, although there are certainly places that you can go to. So I don't know, man. I'm gonna have to figure that out. But I do think that I am going to conclude the chapter here. What we have left is something that you've already experienced, which is me getting the Brompton in the overhead of an Alaska Airlines 737-800. So I think that the newness of everything is sort of, well, not so new. So what are my kind of takeaways? I'll certainly talk about the takeaways from this chapter in the main takeaways episode, which will be coming up in a week perhaps, maybe. As I sit here and record, I never know how the calendar works out, but it will be the next episode. But I would say that what I said to open up this particular section, and that is, I'm not afraid of it anymore, but I do recognize that there are risks and there are potential wear and tear costs. So more to come on all of that. Thank you so much for joining me on this crazy little mileage run that I did. And oh, by the way, I mentioned this, I believe, in the preview episode, but I am purchasing carbon offsets for this. I wanted to wait until after the flight was done so that I knew precisely what happened in terms of, everything. You never know when you can get rerouted and whatnot, but I'm going to buy some carbon offsets for this particular round trip. Anytime I do stuff where I have an actual purpose to be someplace, I think that that's fine. This had less of a purpose, although I certainly hope that I learned something out of this and shared that with you, but I did feel compelled to buy some carbon offsets for this particular one. In any event, thank you all for joining. Thank you so much for being with me for all 4 chapters of the trip, of the tour. And if you haven't, go back and check those all out. We did things that I think were substantially more interesting than this from a cycling perspective, although I do think that this was good lessons learned. So we'll have takeaways very, very soon. Thanks for joining. Statistics. Modalities used: 2, bike and plane. CO2 offset, 1.2 metric tons, thanks to cool effect. Airports biked to and from: 2, San Jose and San Diego. Miles biked in this chapter: I don't know, 5 or 6, hard to tell. Brompton survival rate, 100%. Flats, 0. And as always, we like to close out the show with a special shout out to the Pedal Shift Society. Because of support from listeners like you, Pedal Shift is a weekly bicycle touring podcast with a global community.
Expanding into live shows and covering new tours. If you like what you hear, you can support the show for $5, $2, or even $1 a month. And there's one-shot and annual options if you're not into the small monthly thing. Check it all out at pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lean, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Keith Nagel, Brock Dittus, Thomas Skadow, Marco Lowe, Terrence Manson, Harry Telgadis, Chris Barron, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hipwell, Mr. T, Nathan Poulton, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LaGreco, Cody Florchinger, Tom Beninati, Greg Braithwaite, Sandy Pizzio, Jeff Muster, Seth Pollock, Joseph Quinn, Drew Porter, Byron Patterson, Joachim Robber, Ray Jackson, Jeff Fry, Kenny Mikey, Lisa Hart, John Denkler, Steve Henkel, Miguel Quinones, Alejandro Aviles Reyes, Keith Spangler, Greg Towner, Jody Zeranin, Lucas Barwick, Michael Baker, Brian Bechtal, Reinhard Bigel, Greg Middlemiss, Connie Moore, William Gothman, Brian Benton, Joan Churchill, Mike Bender, Rick Weinberg, Billy Crafton, Gary Matushak, Greg Latoile Lopez, James Sloan, Jonathan Dillard, John Funk, Ronald Paroli, Dave Roll, Brian Hafner, Misha LeBlanc, Ari Messenger, David Kropke, Todd Grossbeck, Wally Estrella, Sue Reinert, John Lico, Stephen Granada, Philip Mueller, Robert Lackey, Dominic Carroll, Jackie McCullough, John Hickman, Carl Presso, David Neves, Hattie Louise, Terry Fitzgerald, Peter Steinmetz, Timothy Fitzpatrick, Michael Lazuski, Hank O'Donnell, David Zanoni, David Weil, Matthew Sponsella, Chad Reno, Spartan Dale, Carolyn Ferguson, Peggy Littlefield, Lauren Allensmith, Eric Burns, Thomas Pearl, Darren McKibben, Richard Stewart, Dave Fletcher, Jack Smith, Luke Parkinson, Ryan Patterson, Cyrus Farivar, John Gardner, Sam Scruggs, Dwight Pintinger, and Connie Bowder. And thanks also to all new and anonymous folks for helping make this show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedal Shift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedal Shift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.